So I've started a number of different businesses. The most recent would have been Alpha Loft. And the Alpha Loft that everybody knows today, or at least some of you might know today, is a nonprofit. I didn't start the nonprofit. I started it Alpha Loft out like 8 years ago as a co-working space in Portsmouth. And I did it because there were no co-working spaces at the time. There's no place to go out and work unless it was a coffee shop or you rented a big office by yourself. And I wanted to hang out with other interesting, like-minded people. Mostly I was interested in meeting other technologists and entrepreneurs. And so that was the space I built, and I did right downtown. And that was sort of a side project. I was still doing consulting work and freelance software development. And that was just a place for all of us to hang out. It didn't make any money. It's a horrible business model unless you can really scale it. But it did open up a lot of opportunity for me, and networking and connections and all those good things. And eventually that co-working space and that small business was acquired by a nonprofit. That nonprofit was the NHICC, which became the ABI. And fast forward a few years, that nonprofit is now being folded into a larger umbrella of nonprofits called New Hampshire Tech Alliance. And so there's just sort of been a continual evolution of all the different initiatives over time as we're still discovering how to best serve the state of New Hampshire and who our customers are and where we can have the greatest impact and how you can have a sustainable model to support all of that. So a successful person in my view is someone who has vision, they're driven, they're going to be able to be, they're persistent, but they're also flexible. And I think that flexibility is key. A lot of times our original idea for what we're going to do, idea A is not the idea that works. And so that flexibility and the persistence allows us to get from idea A to idea that actually works out, right? And the business model and the product and making sure your customers actually care about what you're doing and all those things. And so I think that's where success comes from. Frequently people are too rigid. They had the original idea and that's all they're gonna do and focus on that. And that rigidity makes you brittle and you can't bend, right? And then that's when it all falls apart. So there are so many challenges of the future. Some of them might seem pretty trivial, but I think the hardest ones are the ones that we don't know exactly how to define the challenge yet. Climate change it just seems so like such impending doom that nobody wants to really talk about it, but it will have ramifications that we just can't even understand. But on the flip side, there are technological changes that are happening right now that will change every business model. So failure is a really tough concept, I think, for people to understand at first, because the context we're taught when we're young is grades, right? That's how we understand failure. You don't understand anything and you get an F because you suck. But I guess in the real world, failure can have a lot more meaning and nuance to it and depth. And so sort of if you think about as an entrepreneur and failure, often that means the business you started didn't succeed. And that's kind of like the concept you might say when you say that, there's failure there. And then in that case, most people do, right? And the way you bounce back is, well, you try something different. You don't try the same thing over again. That would be insanity. But also, you learn from that failure. So you should understand why it wasn't working out. Did you have the wrong customer segment? Did you make faulty assumptions? Was there a flaw in the product or the approach or whatever else it is? What have we learned, and can we take those learnings into an advantage for whatever your next thing is, or just know to avoid that industry entirely because of whatever, right? That it's never going to work out for you, or it's just too early, or whatever the other issue is, so that you can kind of move on. But I think it's being able to understand what happened so that you can adjust for the future. Again, it comes back sort of to that flexibility. So I graduated from Whittemore School, now the Paul School, in '96, and back then, believe it or not, nobody had a website. But it was right around the time that a lot of people were thinking, hey, that seems like something I should do. And it was kind of this really early threshold. So I got offered a job at a company that was building websites for people. And it was very first, I just said yes. I didn't even know what the pay was. I didn't pay attention to what my role was. I was just excited not to have to go out and find a job on my own. It was one less thing to worry about. I was pretty excited to just do something new. And in retrospect, I really should have looked around, shopped around.
On my first shadow day, I went to 3S Art Space with Kristen Crawford. Here we attended a Women in Tech event where we both led table discussions. The discussions were based off of education and how it can be changed to greater influence girls to enter tech fields. The event started with a keynote speaker named Gaynell Swan. She told her story about being a woman engineer.
I stand before you tonight as an engineer, an entrepreneur, an educator, a mentor, an advocate, a mother, and a lifelong learner, sharing my story, my thoughts, and perspective to help bring us together in the transformation of how we, and therefore others, must change how she sees herself there. We must all see her excelling in school, pursuing her STEM higher education, thriving in industry, in increasing numbers, in positions of leadership and influence across the board and in those boardrooms. The dialogue continues, but our intentional action is required. Will you join me in this journey? Thank you.
Next, we had our roundtable discussions. Our table talked about the need for good women mentors in 8th and 9th grade who sincerely believe in their girls and want to see them succeed.
One piece of advice that I would give is to know who your customers are. I think a lot of people assume that they know, but after a few questions, it becomes pretty clear that they haven't given a lot of depth to the thought. To me, entrepreneurship is not a topic. It's not like you're studying a moment of history, for example, with entrepreneurship. It's a skill that you learn, and that skill can be applied in a lot of different ways over your lifetime, right? So once you've learned a little bit about how to approach starting a new business and entrepreneurship, maybe your first endeavor doesn't work out, but you can reuse your skills and your learnings over and over and over. It's not just the specific topic of today and how that relates to company X, but internalize entrepreneurship to how you can approach critically thinking about problems and their solution. And that will open up a lot of opportunity and I think give you insight that others won't have. If you say yes to the very first thing that comes along, luck might get you into a good situation, but if you actually have done the research, then luck doesn't play a part. Then it's being thoughtful about your options. So, I'd encourage everybody their time here at UNH to consider this as building the strongest base you can of your sort of educational background. But you're going to be lifelong learners. You're going to be continuing to learn throughout your life, or you should anyway. And it's the side projects, things like that, that are really going to amplify you and make you, give you character and uniqueness, and also open up those opportunities and insights that you might be able to build a business around.
And autonomous cars are going to change it. If you want to build a restaurant, how are people getting there? Where are they parking? Are you in a destination that people want to get to anymore? Where people might be living in different places. So commuting and getting to jobs. Are people working out of their cars? There's a study going on right here at UNH right now about the future of commuting and actually working in your car on your way to work and back from work. But it's also all the other industries. 30% of personal injury law comes directly from car accidents. If autonomous cars remove the accidents, what are the lawyers going to be doing? Gas stations, hotels, you name it. Every single thing you think of